What's going on, y'all? You're back. I'm your host, Paco, and you're listening to Occupy the Media. I want to thank you if you're tuning in right now. We definitely appreciate it. Don't forget that I am on every day, Monday through Friday, 10 to 12 noon Eastern Time and 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time as well. You can go to ronpaulradio.com, click on Listen Live, join us in the chat room, or you can go to Ron Paul Tribune, ronpaultribune.com, click on the voice chat room, and you can join us there as well. Don't forget that we do have parliamentarian Steve Parent with us in there taking questions about the delegate process, and he's going to be occupying my show every Wednesday, 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time, taking questions about the delegates and keeping us updated with the conventions that are going on. Okay, so what else do we have here? We were just talking about some headlines. We're going to jump into some more headlines here. What do we have going on? The House is to examine a plan for United Nations to regulate the internet. Okay? House lawmakers will consider an international proposal next week to give the United Nations more control over the internet. The proposal was backed by China, Russia, Brazil, India, and other UN members and will give the UN's International Telecommunication Union more control over the governance of the internet. It's an unpopular idea with lawmakers on both sides of the aisle in Congress, and officials with the Obama administration have also criticized it. Quote, "We're quite concerned," Larry Strickland, the head of the Commerce Department's National Telecommunications and Information Administration, said in an interview with The Hill earlier this year. He said the measure would expose the internet to top-down regulation where it's really the governments that are at the table, but the rest of the stakeholders aren't. At a hearing earlier this month, Senator Marco Rubio also criticized the proposal. He said China and Russia are not exactly bastions of internet freedom. Any place that bans certain terms from search should not be a leader in international internet regulatory frameworks, he said, adding that he will keep a close eye on the process. Yet the proposal could come up for a vote at the UN conference in Dubai in December. Let's see. Next week's hearing is expected to bring more attention to the U.S. to the measure, which would give the UN more control over cybersecurity, data privacy, technical standards, and the web's address system. It would also allow foreign government-owned internet providers to charge extra for international traffic and allow for more price controls. The House Energy and Commerce Subcommittee on Communications and Technology will hold the hearing and hear testimony from Robert McDowell, a Republican commissioner on the Federal Communications Commission, David Gross, a former State Department official, and Sally Shipman Wentworth, the senior manager of public policy for the nonprofit Internet Society. The Internet is currently governed under a multi-stakeholder approach that gives power to hosts of nonprofits rather than governments. Let's see here. In an op-ed earlier this year in the Wall Street Journal, McDowell warned that a top-down centralized international regulatory overlay is antithetical to the architecture of the net. Quote, "Productivity, rising living standards, and the spread of freedom everywhere, but especially in the developing world, would grind to a halt as engineering and business decisions become politically paralyzed with a global regulatory body," McDowell wrote. So, yes, you guys can check this out at thehill.com. Taking more of our freedoms. You know how we love the United Nations so much. House to examine plan for United Nations to regulate the internet. You know, because they've been doing such a good job of regulating or controlling everything else. What else do we got going on here? More bad news probably. Oklahoma Republican Convention results should be disallowed. This is an article at newsok.com. In response to Pat Grissom, as someone who's been involved in the Republican Party for more than 20 years, working on every possible committee, I can tell you that Ron Paul people weren't the cause of the problems at the Oklahoma Republican Convention on May 12th. I'm not a Ron Paul supporter. I just believe in being fair. It wasn't a Paul person who committed 3 different assaults on delegates. It wasn't the Paul people who broke convention rules. It wasn't the Paul people who were guilty of illegally electioneering in the convention room. Guess who broke that rule? The party vice chair, the establishment, not the Paul people, created this mess. If the RNC has any integrity, it will disallow the convention results and not seat the at-large delegates per party rules. And I agree. That is true. We definitely need to abide by the rules, and those who don't need to be exposed and terminated. You know, if it was us, they terminate us in a heartbeat. This at Freedom Watch, naturalnews.com. Not a single Democrat voted in favor of ending FDA raids on raw milk farmers. Just more proof that there's no difference between Republicans and Democrats. They try to make it seem like that way on the media, and their rhetoric might be a little different. But when it comes to voting, they're no different. Let's see here. After U.S. Senator Rand Paul introduced an amendment that would have ended armed FDA raids on raw milk farmers, let's see here, and legalized free speech about the curative properties of medicinal herbs, nutritional supplements, and superfoods. Are you curious how many Democrats voted in favor of this? 0. A big fat 0 to be exact. Not a single Democrat in the United States Senate believes in fundamental food freedom, farm freedom, or the principles of liberty. Every single Democrat in the Senate is a big brother sellout who supports the FDA having more guns pointed in the faces of raw milk farmers, arresting them and throwing them in prison, criminalizing real food, and destroying America's small family farms. Every single Democrat in the U.S. Senate believes that telling the truth about the beneficial effects of Chinese medicine or medicinal herbs or nutritional supplements should be a crime that can also get you raided, shut down, and imprisoned by the FDA. There is not a single Democrat who sees anything wrong with the government sending herbal product formulators to prison. There is not a single Democrat who believes that an Amish farmer has the right to milk a cow and sell that milk to their neighbor without being threatened by the government. This is an astonishing milestone in U.S. history. When those in Washington who pretend to represent the people openly and publicly vote to crush the very liberties and freedoms they claim to protect, you no longer have a real democracy. You have a police state. And welcome to America. That's what we live in now. That's why I tell people that they're telling me, what are we going to do? What do you mean, what are we going to do? What are we going to do right now? The police state is here. The New World Order, it's all here. Everything is already here. There's no reason to wait no more. You guys hear this? More than 110,000 U.S. soldiers remain on antidepressants and sedatives. This is at naturalnews.com as well. Analysts and experts have long maintained that the duration of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan are having a detrimental effect on the nation's military personnel. Nowhere have the problems of high operational tempos and repeated combat deployments manifested themselves more than in tens of thousands of soldiers and others who are increasingly being medicated in order to deal with the stress. In fact, according to recent figures released by the Army Surgeon General, more than 110,000 U.S. Army personnel were taking antidepressants, narcotics, sedatives, antipsychotics, and anti-anxiety drugs that were prescribed to them by doctors. You know, why don't you give them some marijuana? Bring back our troops. Give them some time off with their families. Give them some marijuana, some herbs, some natural food, some organic herbs, and that'll help out. But instead, what do? We throw them in jail or take them out of the military if they're caught with marijuana. And then what? They're forced to be on these antidepressants, these drugs. These are drugs that people who were normal took them, and then they end up killing themselves or killing someone. You know, there's families that were fighting against the FDA about that, these antidepressants. It's amazing. But no, we're going to throw the herbalists in jail, the people that are curing people. You know, I mean, there's a guy right now in Los Angeles, Dr. Sebi, that claims he cures AIDS. Hey, don't take my word for it. Ask him. He got thrown in jail for it. Guess what? He won his case. He got released from jail because he won. This is in 1989. How come you never heard of this? How come this isn't on the news? How come the military ain't sending troops over to him? Maybe he can help them out. No, we're going to send them to the pharmaceutical companies because after the military-industrial complex makes their money, then we got to send them, and the bankers make their money, we got to send them to the pharmaceuticals so they can make their money off them as well. And then we'll put them in the ground and we'll let the funeral homes make their money after that as well. You know, because we don't care about the troops. All we do is put bumper stickers on the back of the cars, but that don't mean nothing. Anyways, we'll be back. I'm your host, Paco. You're listening to Occupy the Media.
Hi, I'm Dana, and I started out as a Ron Paul fan just like you. And now I'm a full-time volunteer leader at our Ron Paul headquarters in Venice, California. It starts with the first thing you hear Ron Paul say that is different than all the other